It allows you to turn these SOPs, these standard operating procedures that you might have in your company, and put that into kind of an automated flow.
Welcome to Partner Path, a podcast that unpacks the venture capital and growth equity ecosystem from a junior perspective. Young entrepreneurs and investors have already had a massive impact on the industry, having started unicorns and launched billion-dollar funds. We discuss these success stories and more by sharing perspectives and advice from some of the industry's most prominent role models. This podcast expresses our views as of the date published and does not represent the views of and is not endorsed by any company for which we work. Before we get to the episode, Laura and I are excited to announce a partnership with Overlap. Fresh out of Y Combinator's summer batch, Overlap is an AI-driven app that uses large language models to curate the best moments from podcast episodes. Imagine having a smart assistant who reads through every podcast transcript, finds the best parts or parts most relevant to your search, and strings them together to form a new, curated stream of content. That is what Overlap does. I personally use Overlap to explore content on future podcast guests and highly recommend it as another diligence tool for investors. Check out Overlap on the App Store today.
Okay, today we are chatting with Robert Chandler, co-founder and CTO at Wordware. Robert started his career as a software engineer at 5AI before founding HeyDaily. In early 2023, Robert founded Wordware, a toolkit for building AI agents. Welcome, Robert.
Great to be here, Laura.
I don't have a deep understanding of your background, so I'd love if you could go back to the early days of entrepreneurship and maybe when your itch to start something began, since this is not your first rodeo.
Wow, yeah. I mean, truly, I think the start of my entrepreneurial journey was back at school, and I used to bake and sell brownies on the school bus. You probably didn't even know that. This is going way back. Not a venture scale business. Then, God, I got onto the show called The Young Apprentice, or nearly got onto the show called The Young Apprentice. So, you know, Donald Trump was the Apprentice. In the UK, I think it probably started there. We had a guy called Lord Sugar, and he also did a Young Apprentice, which was people like 16 to 18. And I got to the final 20 of 10,000 people to be on that show, which was kind of a rogue anecdote.
Did that motivate you to do something else?
It made me even more hungry. I think, I wanted, always been an entrepreneur, always wanted to make something, sell something. And I guess I didn't go straight into founding a company because I got to join a really interesting startup straight out of university working on self-driving cars. One of the founders was the former CEO of Arm, and between them, they'd sold $1 billion of businesses. And I was like, these are the people to learn from, to learn how to build an incredible company. There were 10 people when I joined, grew to 200 people, got acquired by Bosch for 150 million. So really awesome, kind of working on the cutting edge of machine learning and kind of learning from these incredible founders.
Where were the self-driving cars at?
They were in mostly London. So we probably still the largest public trial of self-driving vehicles in the UK, where we actually ran a test route between two places in London. And we still had a safety driver, but people from the public got to ride in the self-driving cars, and the safety driver would take over occasionally. But
Interesting. So how does the self-driving car scene compare to San Francisco?
Oh, well, there are actually self-driving cars in San Francisco. You've got Waymo. It's interesting because the tech is basically the same. It's just Google has spent $20 billion getting to the point where it works as well as it does. We could talk about self-driving cars for the entire podcast. I think it's super cool that you can ride in a self-driving car in San Francisco. Do I think it's gonna scale to be better than Uber in terms of cost per mile? Not soon.
Yes, I agree. I think one, that's for a different episode. And two, I think the infrastructure of San Francisco, as well as how everything is laid out, and I think the population density makes sense here, but it would be hard to replicate in New York.
Yeah, for sure. And London especially, where it's rainy and dark and people cross the tiny, narrow, winding roads.
Yeah. Then fast forward, you wanted to start something and you did, and you started a company called HeyDaily.
Yeah, so actually I met my co-founder 10 years ago at Cambridge. We were studying machine learning. We, built the Drone Society. We broke into parties. We started a dating app, as you do whilst you're in your university, solve your own problems. And I think every founder has to start a dating app at some point. And so we've been friends for a very long time. He actually left university, started his first company in San Francisco using GPT-2 and BERT. I kind of joined this self-driving car startup, but we'd always like kind of knew that at some point we might work together. And so when he built a company using GPT-2, the tech wasn't quite ready for what it was doing. It's like augmenting human memory, a lot like these pendant devices that we're seeing all over the place nowadays.
Rabbit.
Not like Rabbit, like Rewind or Limitless, like Friend, like the other one that was called Friend, and Tab that turned into Friend. Like,
no longer your friend.
Yeah, and unfriend, blocked. And so the GPT-2 wasn't quite ready for that. So he pivoted into like tech from remote teams, and that was just before COVID hit, so had much more success there. Took a partial exit and actually kind of explored for a little while. Gave me a call 3 years ago, said, hey, come be my co-founder, I've got an idea. I was like, hell yeah, this is like someone that I've wanted to work with for a long time. We were just about to get acquired by Bosch, so the timing was ideal. I did have to leave behind a bunch of equity, but I knew like missing the opportunity to work with like a very close friend and someone who I trust immensely would have been like too big an opportunity cost to miss. So we started, we were both a little bit burned by deep tech. Like, there were, in San Francisco, there's no self-driving cars driving around. At that point in, was it 2021, late end of 2021, GPT-3 hadn't really done much beyond GPT-2. It was still like, okay, like let's do something where we can generate revenue and get fast feedback. So we started a creator economy business, a subscription service for influencers where you would, a lot like Substack or Patreon or OnlyFans, deliver exclusive content in return for like a subscription fee. But it was through like iMessage and WhatsApp. So it was fine.
It's hard to scale those, right?
That was one of the big things. I think we disproved some hypotheses. So we grew it to like 30K MRR, but we disproved some hypotheses that led to basically realizing it wasn't going to be $1 billion business. There was, you actually, the hypotheses meant that you didn't need that big a scale in order to get to like big like revenue.
You just have to increase your ARPU, like your average revenue per customer for each like interaction probably.
Yeah, so
you like sustain.
I think we worked out that we needed basically, the kind of simple maths was if you had 100,000 followers and you could convince 1% of them at $10 a month, or to pay you $10 a month, then you could be making $10,000 a month. We'd take 25% of that. We needed about 3,000 influencers at the revenue multiples at the time in order to be $1 billion business. So it was like, okay, this could be like a sales-led thing. And you'd actually like 3,000 influencers, given there's 20 million or so creators with 50,000 followers or more on Instagram alone, was like, it seemed pretty easy. Turned out like actually very few creators have a following that are willing to pay the money. That's the big thing. It's like,
interesting, yeah. Nowadays, how I view the influencer market is the ones, I think, with what you alluded to with like 50,000, 100,000 followers, it's almost like there's too many, the degrees of closeness are too close.
Yeah.
And then you have the influencers who now are almost hitting celebrity level.
Yeah.
And so their income streams are probably fine without some of this additional passive income because they already have additional passive income.
Yeah, and like if you can do a brand deal for like $50,000, why would you create exclusive content and like make less money?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like, there's all sorts of different ways to monetize. Also, to sign up for a subscription requires like a lot tighter relationship than to sign up for like a one-time purchase. So basically, we disproved that idea, realized like there was a path to something that could have been more sustainable. It was like micro courses delivered through like influencer branded, like a bit like Skillshare, but for like micro courses. Mm-hmm. But we weren't the right people to be building that.
Okay.
And AI got super exciting. We were using like Stable Diffusion to reach out to these creators to like make fan art. So we were like already exploring with AI, and we were like, we should be doing something in AI, not just kind of working with influencers and doing subscription content. So
that's fair. And you also want something that hopefully you can build $1 billion business, or build something that can scale to the level that you and your co-founder are hoping to achieve.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a perfectly good lifestyle business to be built there. That wasn't what we're interested in. We were like, we want to build something huge and something that's like gonna dramatically change the world rather than just make a few people a little bit richer.
That's fair. Okay, but then AI in and of itself is quite a broad term. And even your backgrounds. I mean, your backgrounds are, as you mentioned, more conducive for a hardware type build, but that probably didn't make sense for what you were looking to do next. So how did you decide on agentic use case specifically?
Yeah, I think the period before we pivoted, so, you've got to like make a strong, like pivoting company is hard. You've got to decide that, okay, what you're working on is not good. You've got to decide that like, are you going to do something different? are you going to keep some of the team? Are you going to keep none of the team? What are you even going to work on? So there was kind of a phase where we were exploring everything from like working in like foundational image models to, we explored like neural radiance fields and synthetic data generation, and even like, can we do video generation and these kind of things? And we realized what a lot of people think about LLMs, where they think about them as knowledge like engines, like search engines, and like, how can you make a better Google? So basically the point where we pivoted, which ended up being March 2023, everyone was like doing chat with your docs, or like, can we take in all your knowledge of your like company's data and then like put it into a chatbot? And we was like, okay, that's cool, but what's way more exciting is this is the first thing that we've ever seen that can think. It's the first thing that can reason. And it's like, it's simulated reasoning. It's kind of fuzzy and not amazing, but it's pretty cool. And like, there's something there. So we were looking at this from a reasoning perspective. We started like just building. So we were like, let's read all the papers. Let's read the React paper. Let's read the Toolformer paper. I guess we had to discover these papers even existed. So like, let's just like look at the literature, catch up with everything that's happened with LLMs since, attention is all you need, all the way up to like the state of the art of the day. And we used frameworks like LangChain. We used niche ones like LMQL. We started building these things from scratch and really learned what it meant to build an agent, and kind of felt like there's going to be a huge amount of value created here. It was like an LLM plus a tool. We were like, this is AGI. It's weak AGI, it's inefficient AGI, but it's the kind of, an LLM is the unit of reasoning required to deliver a weak AGI. So we were all about like, how can we turn that weak AGI into a narrow expert AI? And you do that through basically prompting. And so I think what was most exciting, or like one of the reasons it was really exciting to us, is kind of for the last 30 years, software has been about automation, but you've only been able to do if else and structured data. For about the last 10 years, you've been able to do machine learning. So you could do predictive like analysis, or you can do like classification type tasks. And that's really cool and really useful, but it only works if you can gather enough data. You have to gather like millions of examples of data. You have to annotate them. You have to train one model to do one thing. And at the end of that, you've kind of spent a few $1 million. You've hired some machine learning PhDs, and you've waited 6 to 12 months to like get some results, and you've automated one thing. With LLMs, that activation entry dropped through the floor to basically zero. And so there was this kind of new wave of software that through prompting alone, through this very low-hanging fruit where you didn't need to be insanely technical, you could build incredibly powerful automations that previously would have just been impossible or intractable.
Okay, so then that brings us to agents.
Agents, yep.
Now, a quick word from our sponsor. Laura and I are thrilled to announce a partnership with Grata, an intuitive deal sourcing and diligence platform. Keep missing out on private market deals? Ditch the Rolodex and get Grata. Grata's AI-powered platform provides accurate data, deep insights, and time-saving workflows that help get more deals done. And it's trusted by over 500 firms and 3,000 deal makers, including myself. I've personally used Grata in both my deal sourcing and diligence workflows, and would recommend their tool to any investor across private equity, growth equity, corp dev, or investment banking. We've negotiated a special offer for our audience. Mention PartnerPath to the Grata team during sign-up, and you'll get free executive seats for your partners and MDs included in your subscription. Now, back to the episode.
Can you just break down generally agents and how kind of Wordware fits into this revolutionizing human productivity?
Yeah. So I think whenever you think about agents, you can basically think about them as a collection of prompts. So there's kind of a little bit more to it than that. They are kind of an orchestration of prompts, and those prompts can use tools, so they can pull in extra information. They're also able to, do inter-agent communication, which basically means having the outputs of one prompt feed into the inputs to the next prompt. And together you get something that kind of forms this reasoning system. Some of that orchestration gets it to self-reflect, gets it to think, and it can look at its own output. And really you can think about it a little bit like this. When you use ChatGPT, you're kind of a wizard and you're casting a spell and you're saying, I want you to write me a blog post. And if you just put that into ChatGPT, you get a pretty mediocre output. And maybe you say, or write me an essay on the Roman Empire. You'll get an okay essay, but it's not going to be very good. But if you're a bit more skilled with ChatGPT, you can be like, okay, I'm going to write an essay about the Roman Empire. First, I'm going to paste in some research from Wikipedia about some articles. And then I'm going to tell ChatGPT to create an outline, and then I'm going to get it to refine that outline, and then I'm going to get it to write the introduction, then the conclusion, and then fill in the paragraphs, and maybe I'll get it to proofread and critique, and then I'll get it to rewrite. And that's like what a skilled prompt engineer would do. And what you can do with Wordware is you can kind of distill that whole process into a flow, into something that would be like almost like an SOP in a business. So you can basically orchestrate this agent as a potion. So you've gone from being a wizard casting a spell to a person making a potion. And then you can share that potion with your friends or your colleagues. And suddenly everyone becomes as powerful a wizard as you are. So that's a very high level kind of version of what Wordware is. But I guess concretely, it allows you to turn these SOPs, these standard operating procedures that you might have in your company, and put that into kind of an automated flow. I think another way that we quite like to think about it is we have this process, this thing that we call the intent test. And basically with our customers, we ask them, if you were trying to explain this to an intern, what would they do? Where would they look for data to answer the kind of question you want them to answer or do the thing you want them to do? What are the steps they would take? And if you can do that, if you can explain that, then you can probably get an AI to do it for you. So you break down the problem into this set of sub-steps. You then kind of narrow the scope of what this agent can do, but you get it to be much more reliable. And that's really where Wordware helps you craft these chains of prompts, orchestrate these LLMs and interact with the tools and pull in the right data to build automations that would otherwise previously not have been possible.
It was a very graceful explanation. Thank you. And let's put this into practice. What are some of the initial use cases you're seeing on Wordware?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really broad. So we have customers that are in finance, we have customers that are in logistics, we have customers that are in a lot of like AI sales-based products. But I think it really is anything that you could give to an intern. It's like, if you could give it to an intern, suddenly you can have 1,000 interns. And then what use cases are valuable for that? And so like in sales, it's how can I write much better cold email outreach copy that's like really personalized to the end user. If you had an intern, you could teach them how to like look at their LinkedIn and pull in the right data and craft a hook and then like write a good email. And that would be intractable to train enough interns that would be worthwhile. But with AI, you train one intern and you have 1,000 interns or 1,000,000 interns and then zero again. With like the legal use cases, it's how can I create a trademark application? Because that's the kind of thing that actually is pretty much run off the mill. And so this is one where it's actually not fully automated. You still have the lawyer review it, but 80% of the work is kind of grunt work. It's okay, I need to describe, take in this company's like landing page and description and turn it into a kind of slightly more legalese description that covers a broader as much part of their trademark without infringing on other people's trademarks. So I also need to do some like research on who could they possibly be infringing, and then compare their description to their kind of potential competitors or like infringement descriptions. And it's basically what are the reasoning processes that make up knowledge work. I think we're in a decade where it's kind of like automate or be automated, and a lot of people are building companies that are looking to automate the things that they have domain expertise in.
I like that. Automated or be automated. How would Wordware differ from like traditional no-code tools or maybe more opinionated customers that actually want to go in, they're coding, they're engineers, and who want to make more of the sausage?
Yeah, so I guess, say traditional code tools or traditional no-code tools?
Sorry, no-code tools. Because Wordware it's like you said, it's a wide audience. People like me, people like you, we have very different backgrounds, but everyone can use Wordware, which is awesome because it's a horizontal AI tool.
I think so. I think you can think of it a little bit like Excel. And, there's a long tail of use cases in which end users built, like basically programmed using Excel. They don't really think about it as programming. Sometimes you're just using the sum function, you're adding some data, and that's like a useful tool that people have created for their own use. There's the similar kind of thing where, there's the VLOOKUPs and then there's the macros. With Wordware, you really have like progressive ability to get more and more complex with like a very high ceiling. So I think kind of Wordware sits between two ends of the spectrum. One end is like fully code-based, so things like LangChain, doing it from scratch, just hitting the APIs directly, where you have to be a developer, you have to have experience writing software, you have to be able to deploy this yourself. That's the big blocker, is this very slow feedback cycle between the engineers and the people who know what good looks like. And so that's a very limited use case. On the other end, you have a lot of these low-code tools, so things like Zapier, other tools that are like more AI-first Zapiers, or they're kind of like flowchart-based things. And the problem there is you hit a ceiling very quickly. If you want to add any kind of logic, you struggle. You can basically do quite okay linear flows, but as soon as it gets quite complicated, then it's kind of game over. Wordware sits between the two, and it gives you the kind of flexibility of all this, or like the low floor of the no-code tools with the high ceiling of software. So you can combine the flexibility of natural language with the structured programming and build these like genuinely complex, genuinely useful agents, whether you're technical or non-technical, or you're collaborating between technical and non-technical teams. And then you can deploy it through an API, or you can trigger it through Zapier. And that way you've kind of got this broad base, whether you're trying to build an AI-powered product or you're trying to automate parts of your workflow.
Okay, that makes a ton of sense. So right now I don't think we've hit AGI yet. And I think that's universally agreed upon. And I think, well, depending who you ask, but I think we're really making steps towards automating more and more of the workflow. And by using tools like Wordware and other domain-specific tools, where do you see the future of Wordware going? You kind of described where it's at right now, which is like amazing, just the progress you've made in under 2 years. But like, what does the future of Wordware look like?
Yeah, I would argue that if you asked someone 2 years ago, is like what you're building today AGI? Probably the answer would be yes.
Yeah, it's relative.
I think just like our expectations have got higher. But
definitions have changed. Definitions didn't exist.
Yeah. Well, exactly. It was like, oh, we'll kind of know it when we see it. It's AGI. It's it'll be human level intelligence, whatever that means.
I like that. The bar keeps getting higher.
The bar gets higher. Yeah. It's I think it's like yeah. Anyway, where is Wordware going is probably the slightly easier question. Like we could also spend an entire podcast discussing AGI. Where is Wordware going? I think the goal is to be the AI operating system. We want to empower teams to augment themselves. We want the people to be focusing on the really differentiated work, the stuff that's like uses their special skills of being a human, their experience, all of that, and then offload the kind of grunt work to AI, and that's actually really tailored to their taste. So I think one of the problems with like a lot of off-the-shelf AI systems is you lose that taste. You don't get much control over how good the outputs are and like whether they align exactly with what you want versus what just like the generic optimal thing is. And I think as the kind of more and more AI happens, more like there's more and more content being put out there by AI or like work being done by AI, the big differentiator will be like, have you imbued your own companies or your own personal taste on that output? It's like we see a lot of content that says delve. You might not want your content to say delve, and you might want it to be sort of more fun and more upbeat. So I think Wordware becomes this AI operating system by starting with narrow agents that are like highly specialized, highly like reliable, repeatable, very good at doing one thing, and then expanding into being orchestrated by more general agents. So for now, it's very much like event-based triggering. So you'll receive an email, you run a Wordware agent that creates a draft response, or maybe it just sends the response. You'll start to see maybe like a slightly higher level agent that will act as your like EA, and then that will have the ability to like craft, like delegate to a narrow agent to respond to, maybe in your case, like an inbound fundraising email. And you'll be like, okay, let's do some research on this company, and like, what are the things I need to know? I need to like find out when it was founded, like what the previous fundraising history was, who's backed them, like what are the background of the founders, what's the product, like do I care about this market, and like and then there'll be a bunch of different responses that you'll give based on that, and maybe you'll ask follow-up questions, or maybe you'll be like, let's schedule a meeting. It's all down to you, and like what do you do day to day?
Yeah, I have a lot of use cases, so that makes sense. One, the growth has been phenomenal. I actually read that your launch on August 2nd, you grew from 10,000 users on the main product to over 300,000 users today, and I'm sure that number is outdated.
It's, we're growing a lot.
Yeah, which is amazing, and I think it's worth tapping in, honestly, just to the growth strategy. And I know you're more on the tech side, as I introduced you, you're CTO and Co-Founder, but how important is scaling like quality of users versus like quantity of users, especially given that the use cases are quite dispersed, and to burn calories in all these different areas of like helping onboarding, get people up to running, you have to know kind of where to burn them.
No, it's a massive challenge. And actually as the CTO, I'm the one that ends up like, we've got all these requests for different features across like a very broad spectrum. It's like, how do we prioritize to make sure enough people that we care about are happy? And that's really hard. I think really, and I guess, do founders listen to this podcast as well?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So this is like it's it's one of those things as a founder, you have to like work out where do you place your bets. And actually when we launched, we weren't expecting to get quite as much traction as we did. We thought, we're building something really useful, but we got a lot more prosumer traction than we'd expected, even though we hadn't done anything to like build the onboarding, to build like the kind of B2C type product that you'd expect. And so we are now prioritizing more of those features than we were before. We were focused largely on B2B, on these scale-ups and startups who are building AI-powered backends. They are still our most important customer, but we are starting to add features and like onboarding and like integrations with Zapier that help the slightly more prosumer users, at least the ones that are really like passionate. And over time, we're going to be adding more and more features. But I think there's all sorts of things you need to do building a company. One is get your name out there so people know you exist. And so a lot of what we've been doing has always been, and actually we're building a horizontal tool. So not only do people need to know we exist, they need to know like what can we do with this tool. And so we've always been dogfooding Wordware. So we've always been using Wordware to build fun or useful tools to demonstrate like, oh, you can build, we have one called Audio Scribe. And it's like, you can build a tool, a thing with Wordware where it takes in a voice note and turns that into like a summary. And it will first classify that voice note. So it could be you're making a shopping list, or it could be you're making a journal entry, and it has different prompts for those different kind of aspects. We've kind of been using Wordware. We did one that went insanely viral, which was the kind of Twitter roast. I think we got like 8 million people run that, probably more now. I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but that was obviously great for getting attention. Most of those users are like most of those kind of people who use the Twitter roast are not going to be our ICP. Like a small fraction of them then signed up for Wordware, and like some of those are our ICP and some of those are the more prosumer ICP. And there's benefits to having like people using Wordware and playing with Wordware and giving us feedback. There's also a lot of noise to cut through when you have that. So it's a challenge. I don't think there's a good answer.
And hopefully the goal with prosumer is a lot of this can be self-served, honestly, and people can get up and running.
Yeah, and what's awesome is like, it helps test our infrastructure. So, having run, I think we ran like 6 or 7 million executions of an agent within a 24-hour period or like a few day period. And that really tests our infrastructure. And that's good. That's good for people putting their trust that actually if Wordware can deal with that level of traffic, then we'll be fine. Because it's pretty rare to have that scale of just like usage of a product, especially overnight. It went from like 0 to millions.
You have to share your tech stack after this. We'll put it in the show notes.
Well,
we'll plug Wordware and the
tech stack.
4 providers you're using. Probably more. But actually, I want to dig into something you mentioned with users, finding your ICP, cutting through the noise. I think it's relevant in the same vein of being in San Francisco. Yeah. And there's so many startups, especially in agent infrastructure right now. And honestly, even frameworks or orchestration tools, which might be adjacent but friendly competitors to you guys. So how do you think about honestly standing out in this space right now?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who have gone, prompting is the new programming. Let's build the same tools we have for programming, but for prompting. Prompting agents, they're all basically the same thing. I think people use the word agent a lot when they really just mean a collection of prompts. And it's because it sounds more fancy, it sounds more exotic.
Prompting for GitHub.
Prompting, yeah.
I read that on your YC website.
GitHub for agents, I think we probably say somewhere.
Yeah, that's better.
And so a lot of people have gone, okay, let's build the same tools. They've built the observability layer, or they've gone via the evaluation layer, or they've gone for like the user feedback, or like one of these like niche parts of the stack. And the problem there is that they're kind of obvious and they're kind of not useful until you've got something that works well enough. And they're also very easily replaceable. So you can very easily replace your observability layer with another observability layer. If it's easy for you, if you've built your tool, your observability layer such that it's easy to plug in, which you kind of have to for Git adoption, then everyone's going to build something that's easy to plug in, and therefore you've got no moat, like not a big moat. So there's a lot of people trying to compete for the same like small subset of users. I think the way we took it differently was to say, okay, prompting is the new programming, but from first principles, what should the tools look like? And to us, that really meant starting with the orchestration layer. That is like the most important part of all these agents, is how do you combine the prompts and the tools and the domain experts and the user input into something that can build like genuinely useful AI agents. And so we have had to take quite a lot of that programming stack. And so we started with the orchestration. We also did the deployment. So we're a little bit like Vercel in the sense that we have the layer that is the Next.js, that is the Wordware programming language. And then we have the deployment where you like Vercel, where you deploy for Vercel, but you deploy your agent through Wordware. We're working on the GitHub for agents as well. So where people can fork and share, and we get that network effects. I think really think about it from a perspective of like, this is something new, let's treat it as something new, rather than like, this is something new, let's do the obvious things that will be needed. Because if you own the orchestration layer, you can then add in the monitoring and observability and feedback and fine tuning and all this other stuff. But you can't rip out the orchestration layer very easily. Like once you built using LangChain or once you built using Wordware, it's very difficult to replace your orchestration layer.
And I think the orchestration layer is honestly the nucleus that feeds into customers' opinions. They say, we just want to work. We wanted this to work. And yeah, it's easier said than done. But it's like once the orchestration layer is working, then it really can only get better.
Yeah, and I think what matters is that how tight can you make that feedback cycle? And we saw this in self-driving cars. We saw this like, if you can get more information from every drive you take, like where did I go wrong, even if I didn't have a driver disengagement? And if I did have a driver disengagement, how quickly can I work out why the driver had to disengage and like improve that part of my stack? And if I do improve part of my stack, how quickly can I get that deployed such that when we can actually tell if the fix has improved it? It's all about how can you make responses faster. And we did that by like put the domain expert in the driving seat. So you can like edit and iterate instantly rather than having this kind of back and forth between the engineer writing the prompts in the code base, showing the results to the PM or the CEO, them going, it's good on X, it's bad on Y, the vibes are off. An engineer going, I don't like vibes, what am I doing? And like trying to optimize towards this fuzzy direction. It's like, no, just put the person who knows what good looks like in the driving seat. They can iterate like 100 times in an afternoon and build something genuinely useful much, much faster.
That makes a ton of sense. You probably see yourself partnership opportunities with the other agent infrastructure companies.
Yes, maybe.
So that's another thing. I'm seeing more and more companies go to other parts of the stack.
Yeah, I mean, they all are.
Like when I look at my market map now, the market map started here and we're slowly converging.
You kind of have to. If you're not, once you've done monitoring, you might as well do evaluation. And then you add a playground. And then, it's...
No, I agree with you. Yeah, if you're monitoring logs and watching that, you might as well set evals, benchmarks as well.
And like
kind of
collect user feedback.
Yeah.
I think that there will be consolidation over the next few years. I'm not yet sure who I think will win, but then I'm also biased because I think we're going to win. So
fair enough.
I don't know if this will be on the podcast.
Yeah, what's next for you all right now? You just finished, I should have given context. You just finished a very impressive YC batch, just raised a very impressive round. Feel free to touch on that, or you can just touch on what's next.
I think by the time this podcast is out, we will have announced.
Yeah.
But I think we raised the largest round ever for a company in a YC batch. So we raised 27 million at a big valuation.
Yeah.
And we are now, I guess, expanding the team. So we're looking for amazing kind of everything across the entire team. But like I'm especially invested in the technical team. So full stack product engineers, designers. We're like looking for great people. A lot of our team are ex-founders and love to really build in what is the new paradigm of this is the new internet. There's a Microsoft scale opportunity to be built, and we are trying to take that opportunity and build something like a generational company. So if you like working on hard problems, you want to invent things that have never been done before, then come join us. And I guess, what are we building next? It's kind of building that AI operating system. So I guess I can go concretely into our roadmap, but that would be a bit boring for the podcast. So
more of a show notes type of thing.
Yeah. So lots of interesting and hard problems, and not enough people to work on them at the moment. So
in San Francisco,
in person.
It's the best kind.
Yeah, fully in person, and I won't tell you where our office is going to be because it's not yet 100% confirmed, but fully in person in San Francisco.
Why don't we end with a quick fire round, if that works?
Let's do it.
Okay, what's an agent trend that you're most bullish on?
I'm most bullish on narrow AI agents, which I think has been under-discussed. It's quick fire, so I might stop there, but I think...
Just quickly define narrow AI agent.
Yeah, so an agent that does one task, and these are somewhere between software and AI. They might have self-reflective reasoning loops, but they are only trying to do one thing, like write a blog post or a cold email, or kind of do one part of the code execution process. And I think narrow agents, you're able to get more reliability, you're able to use smaller, faster, cheaper models, or squeeze more value out the smarter, bigger models. They will be quicker because they don't have to work out how to solve the problem every time. I think one of the problems you see with a lot of these inter-agent, like autogen style agents, is that they pontificate a lot and they think a lot, and they you get less reliable results, and there's a reasonably high chance they go off in some random direction and start self-prompting. And I think narrow agents are the way to go, at least with today's capabilities, but I still think that'll be true as the models get better. You will always get better results from a narrow agent than you do from a general agent. It's just like you constrain the best AI out there to do something like smaller in scope, it will be better at that task.
And what's an industry agents are poised to disrupt that people aren't talking enough about?
Oh God, everything. It's the entirety of knowledge work is about to be disrupted.
What's your favorite agent built on Wordware so far?
Most of my favorite agents are fun. So we have one that we use a lot in our Slack channel called Shrekify, and it takes in some description and turns it into a Shrek.
That's funny.
Cartoon. So yeah, I should definitely say something that's like one of our customers, but yeah.
That's fun. Prediction. What % of enterprise companies will be using agents in 2025?
100% that still exist in 2035.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you, Robert. This was fun.
Awesome. That was great fun.